Here is a country of great contrast.
Great civilization of antiquity.
A foreign country a step away.
All right. It's the Casa de Cavazos. Oh, yeah.
It's like a game show.
El Sábado Gigante. It's Saturday, February 15th. Justin here, Ada here, Nathan here. Actually, all in the same place today. We're in Austin, Texas. It's the night before the Austin Half Marathon that Ada and Nathan are running. How are y'all feeling? How's Austin treating you?
I feel like throwing up. I'm hungover. Hopefully, I'll feel better tomorrow.
Hungover from what?
2 drinks. A margarita from Chewy's and a beer.
Wait, hold on. Okay. Keep that in the pod.
2 drinks does not make a hangover.
When you're me, it does. I need to be optimized.
So you need to be optimized for the half marathon by eating a bunch of barbecue the night before.
I'm also going to eat some pasta, and I'm drinking some tea right now. Some sweet tea.
Not like an herbal, not like
Yes.
decaf black tea, like sweet tea.
So you've committed to running at my pace initially.
Sure, but I may have to drop off because it could go horribly for me if my heart rate's 190, like 2 miles in.
Are you going to wear the horrible shirt they gave out?
No.
Why do you hate the shirt so much?
I'm not sure. I need to look in the mirror to see how much I hate it, actually.
I think the design is pretty mediocre this time. I feel like when it was Live Strong, the last time we did, it was a way nicer shirt.
Yeah.
You should have brought the shirt from the last one to run during this one.
Nah. It's all right. So this is what, episode 15?
Nice. 15 on the 15th.
That would be cool.
We're learning a lot about each other through the pod.
Like what?
Like how I have ADHD.
So are we now self-diagnosing on this
No,
pod?
it was not a self-diagnosis. I thought I may have ADHD as a med student. And so when I was on my psychiatry rotation, my attending gave me a test. And he's like, yes, you have ADHD. Let me give you some Ritalin. And I said, no, I don't want meds.
That makes sense because last time you were talking about Tom Brady's glowing watch for like 2 minutes nonstop.
That's what ADHD does to me. It makes me an interesting person just talking about random things and learning about random things.
Well, I didn't believe you. You pulled up the video of the watch. It's like, why is it so yellow? What is wrong with this watch?
See, it's like the ADHD quality right there. It's like squirrel. That was the watch for me.
Yes, of course.
That all makes sense why you get into these things and just drop them so quickly.
Like what? Give an example.
You had like the grilling phase, the golf phase, and then you're just like, done, I'm done.
The writing phase.
The writing phase is not a phase.
There was never a writing phase, just to be clear, because she has written nothing.
I am going to write something just to spite you.
Yeah, there was the married phase.
You'll write nothing. You were surprised that I even wrote anything for the inauguration day pod in like 3 minutes. You can't write anything in 10 years.
What? You wrote that?
I'm a methodical writer. It means slow.
Is it methodical if it doesn't come out?
Yes.
She has concepts of a book.
I have concepts of a plan. But ADHD is actually pretty cool for me. I've learned how to study with it, which is I have to dabble in different techniques, different books, videos, audio. I just got to keep it interesting. So I figured out how to work with it, and I think it makes me learn about a lot of different random things, and I can be pretty interesting because of that.
It's also why you can't have the TV on during the pod.
Because I'll start watching it.
Yep. Right now, the way that we're set up, there's actually a TV on in the room, but Ada is explicitly facing away from it.
Oh, no, we had a game on one time during the pod, and I wasn't watching at all. So you're mistaken, sir.
That is a lie. Go back and listen to the pod.
She was definitely watching.
I didn't know what was going on in the national championship game. I was so focused.
Okay. Whatever you say.
Yes.
So we're in Austin right now. It's pretty nice. Kind of colder than my wife and I expected it to be. We came in from Chicago where we had just had a winter storm. It was pretty cold, and we get here, it's like 30 or 40 degrees. Y'all are going to be running in the cold tomorrow. We've already established that you have different feelings about that.
I have loving feelings towards that.
I'm not happy at all. I bought a new shirt just for the run.
You gotta hate it till you love it, man.
P90X. Ab Ripper X.
We're in Austin, home to the Texas Longhorns, a couple of tech companies, as well as the Joe Rogan Experience, which has been the podcast that you all have been listening to as of late a lot. Ada, you're talking about how you were listening to the podcast on the way down.
On the way up. On the way up, I was listening to it and becoming extremely angry while I was driving.
Were you like gripping the yoke of your car harder?
Maybe. My hands were getting sweaty.
The weird Tesla wheel yoke that got like weirdly hot. I drove it last night for the first time. It was terrible. I was super mad about everything from the blinker buttons to being in the weird positions to not being able to properly do a hand over hand turn. And for some reason, the wheel was just warm. Like my hands were getting sweaty just holding onto the yoke.
Apparently it was heated.
If you need to do a quick 3-point turn to change directions, the fact that you have to go and move to a different part of the screen in order to put your car in reverse and then forward again, terrible design. Whoever designed that is an idiot and an imbecile.
Like I've said before, you get used to it. Yes.
I'm just shaking my head. That's what that silence was. I was shaking my head.
Terrible decision. I stand by it 100%.
I have 2 cars now. I have a Rivian as well, which actually I drive that more on a day-to-day basis because my child wants me to drive it. She prefers the Rivian.
Well, she knows the Tesla sucks too.
Well, not because of the yoke or anything like that, but
because of the smell.
Which I just got 2 cabin filter replacements and it didn't do much.
The hell.
So you're telling me that my old Tesla is better than your new Tesla?
I think in terms of the smell and in terms of the wheel probably, but the range is not as good. But my child like literally gets disappointed if I drive her in the Tesla. She wants to be in the Rivian all the time.
So which of these vehicles is the one that you listen to Joe Rogan in the most?
I don't listen to Joe Rogan that much to where I consider that situation.
I don't know. You talk about him a lot for someone who claims to not listen to him.
We tend to read the transcripts to try to be more efficient. But I will tell you that there was a stressful part of the drive and I kind of like had to pause the Joe Rogan episode because you don't want to be like angry and then also like super stressed out because you're like on some super narrow road and all this construction going on and you're driving 70 miles an hour. So at some point I was like, let's take a break from this. But I did listen to over 2 hours of the Mike Benz episode.
Was your heart rate up? Was your blood pressure up?
I don't know. I didn't have data like that. I wasn't like with the blood pressure cuff on while I was driving and also checking my watch to see what my heart rate was.
Would have been great content for the pod. But you goofed. You done goofed. So what was making you so angry about the pod?
It's hard to explain. There's just so much. Like, it's crazy that this guy is so irresponsible and so dumb. Joe Rogan. And then he brings on people who are similarly irresponsible. And they say things like with authority. And they're influencing like 20 to 30 million people. It's just terrible.
Can you provide an example of something that they've talked about with this quote-unquote authority?
Well, let's just talk about the one that we were listening to today, which is the Adam Curry episode. Apparently, he was a former MTV guy, like a VJ.
Okay.
And he also does podcasts.
Adam Curry?
Yeah.
No relation to Steph, Seth, or Tim?
I don't think so. Not that I'm aware of.
Apparently, he's the inventor of podcasting.
Is he? Is it kind of like the Al Gore thing, how you invented the internet?
Well, Adam Curry and Dave Weiner are credited with the invention of podcasting. That's what he was talking about close to the end.
So today they were talking about how clear it is that fluoride is toxic and it shouldn't be in the water. And like they're just saying this with authority. Like, it's toxic, it's bad. Oh, there's a reason why Tom's makes fluoride-free toothpaste, because it's bad for you. Like, that is illogical. It could be because there's a market for people who are afraid of fluoride, have beliefs about fluoride, that are looking for this type of toothpaste. Tom's has fluoride toothpaste as well, but they do have a fluoride-free option. So stuff like that is just ridiculous.
And the logic behind it was that they wouldn't have a fluoride-free product unless it was bad for you.
What is the scientific reasoning behind that?
So you would also only eat egg whites because the yolks are bad for you. Right?
We were talking about when we were listening to it, it was like, well, there's also like deodorant that's aluminum free, because I've heard people say like, oh, well, I don't want to put that in my body. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's toxic. It's just that some people don't believe in certain things. So companies know how to market these things. And if you don't want to put aluminum in your body and you see a deodorant that's aluminum free or toothpaste that's fluoride free, you're going to pick that up off the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
There's no research that low levels of fluoride are toxic to the brain.
Yeah.
However, he did go on like, oh, well, there's studies where high levels, which of course are bad, but the amount of fluoride that's put into your water supply is at such a small level. It's kind of like when you go to the dentist, like they're not going to give you a level of fluoride that's going to hurt you or anything. So, I mean, he's there saying this. I mean, I've talked to, just by chance, like in my field of work, I do a lot of work for water treatment facilities. So I ended up asking one of the operators, and he was like, this is ridiculous that they're attacking this fluoride. The amount of fluoride that's in the water is so minuscule. Like, there's no way it would be toxic to you. And of course, I had already looked this up anyway. He's like, and yeah, he's like, even naturally occurring water sources have some fluoride, which Joe Rogan even said. But then they continue on that spiel that like, oh, and I think this has already been debunked, that I think Germany was getting the people in the camps to be more docile by giving them fluoride.
That sounds crazy, just like hearing that. Like, I feel like I'd want to fact check that immediately if I heard something like that on a podcast. Or anywhere, really.
Yeah, but you just have to say it confidently enough. You have to say, well, I know for a fact that there is a study that says by drinking less water, everyone knows that it'll reduce your cholesterol.
Well, that's exactly the problem with our situation now, right? And so the Mike Benz episode was also about like free speech and like how the Democrats want to censor.
Who's Mike Benz?
I don't even know, because if you try to look up this guy's background, you don't even know what his education is. Apparently, he's like some guy that worked for the State Department under the last Trump administration and does like some cybersecurity stuff. And also, there's a background where he was some kind of troll or something like that.
Yes, correct.
People can just say whatever they want, and you can have 20 to 30 million people listening to Joe Rogan say completely stupid shit, complete lies, and it influences people in a negative way.
And he's also the one that put Elon Musk onto USAID, because he was on the podcast in December talking about this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so a lot of the podcast, the Mike Benz podcast with Rogan, was about USAID. And even just listening to it, you should be wanting to fact check most of it, because it sounded so ludicrous. Like, oh, like USAID is like literally doing all the dirty work the CIA doesn't want to do. It's like, what? Like, that doesn't sound real. And then sometimes Mike Benz would also say things like, well, actually, I don't really have some of the inside knowledge, but I'm kind of assuming. Like,
well, just on some quick research on Mike Benz, apparently he was only on the Trump administration for like 2 months anyway. So, I mean, how much information could he have gathered where Joe Rogan is on there agreeing with everything as usual?
Yeah. Also in that same pod, Joe Rogan again spreads the lie that disaster victims are only getting $700 from FEMA. So he spread that lie about the Maui victims. Because the whole point of that was to say, well, like the U.S. is wasting all this money on these other countries, on USAID, and then like they only give $700 to their actual citizens. That's just a one-time payment. There are other programs that help them out, like the Maui victims and the Hurricane Helene victims.
But he sounds like he actually believes it. He sounds like he's actually like pissed off about these issues, and that yes, they're shining a light on it. We're doing the good work.
Do you think he actually believes it, or now he's just really good friends with Elon and Trump, and now he's pushing the narrative they want, and he knows he's going to make more money if he continues going this way?
I think he believes it. I think he's stupid. And unfortunately, like, our population now is mostly listening to podcasts and watching videos, and they're assuming like this guy is saying things in good faith. and they're believing like, oh my God, like USAID is like a criminal organization.
And what do you make of this continued attack he has on experts? Like just today, like in the opening minutes of the podcast, right before he starts talking about the whole fluoride thing, he's like, air quotes, like experts. Like you just believe these people because they say they're experts.
That's been the whole right wing thing for many years now. They've successfully discredited experts just by basically saying that they're not experts.
Well, I don't understand how you talk crap about quote unquote experts and yet find studies
by experts?
Yeah, by experts that validate your point of view in some way. You have to believe in experts to some extent.
Yeah, well, that's the whole problem with the current internet. You can supply a credible source, which is correct, but now there's alternative studies where maybe the study's completely made up, but it doesn't matter. It fits their narrative, and they're going to be like, no, you're wrong because I have a study right here that says that what you're showing me is incorrect.
Well, they honestly can't interpret the studies properly most of the time. When Rick Perry was talking about ibogaine, we talked about that. Most of these people actually don't have the background, the skills to evaluate these studies properly. So that's also faulty in terms of their evaluation of these studies.
Well, the other thing I'm thinking about besides the studies is he keeps on pushing this idea that we would have lost freedom of speech had Kamala Harris won.
What?
Yeah, that's why when we finished our last pod, I said our next pod should be about his misinformation because they're pushing this narrative, 30 million listeners, and it's probably getting to more than like 50 because, I mean, these people talk to each other. I've heard people talk about this podcast out in my life. So they're trying to tell you that the censorship that happened would not allow them to say what they want. But the truth is the censorship was about things that could have hurt people. Freedom of speech is not there for you to just flat out lie to the American people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just very confused as to this double-sided coin regarding freedom of speech. You can say like they were censoring people. They didn't want conservative voices to be heard. And at the same time, you're hearing about Elon Musk wanting the government to go after and dox like Wikipedia editors.
Well, a lot of it, what's been going on for several years now, it's like an abusive relationship with these people. It's like, well, actually, I'm not the one censoring. You are. Like, I'm the one for free speech. You're not for free speech, even though it's like, what?
So we're all being gaslit.
We are being gaslit. And I think that we should write a book about it because it's very much like an abusive relationship. And that's part of the reason, too. Like, I don't really want to talk to certain people that have been in my life because they become abusive, too.
And that's what's working for the Republicans and the far right now. They've felt like for the last 4 years, and talking to some people since Obama, that the division really started with the Democrats and like their rights are being taken away. The fact that you allow trans people, gay people to express themselves is infringing on their beliefs. So they've felt attacked for so long, and now they're hearing like, oh yeah, this guy's on our side. So they're basically telling you deal with it because they've already been infringed upon for so long.
Wait, so how does the livelihood and the existence of trans and gay people infringe upon the religious rights of any person in this country? Like, how do they believe that to be true?
I mean, they're basically, if you're a religious person, the way they're coming at this is that it's wrong. So now you're force feeding it down their throats. Hey, you need to accept these other people, which to them is abomination. So that's the logic that they're going with. And that's why they vote for Trump, because he's protecting their religious ideals. So it doesn't matter what he does, as long as it appears to them that their ideals are being protected.
I mean, that's still gaslighting to me. Like, how are you force feeding people to like practice transgender ideology? You're not saying you have to have a transgender kid or something.
Well, that's where the scare tactics come in with the whole, your child shows up to school, boy, comes home a girl. what's the other thing? The same example that's always given to me. And I find it funny because like it's the exact same argument. You can give me 10 different Trump supporters and they all say the same thing. They're either not a Trump supporter, they're just on the side of being right. As far as being right, I guess Christian. And they're like, well, how would you feel if your daughter had to box against a man? And I'm like, highly unlikely. But if that scenario happened, I think we would know whether we'd accept that or not. Like if she didn't want to compete, she would be able to make that decision. And then of course, as soon as that happens, it's immediate. The immediate response is, oh, well, how would you feel if a transgender went into the same restroom as your daughter? And I'm like, that's what your concern is. And then they turn it into like, oh, most transgenders are like sex offenders, which is also not true.
What?
This is the narrative that's out there.
Where are they getting this information from? Rogan?
Probably.
This is the other thing that I've been telling Ada is that this playbook they have is always on some personal experience. And you can never narrow it down because they'll either say it happened to them, and if not, it happened to a close friend. So no matter what you say, they've already experienced it. So it's very hard to knock that down because it happened to them, allegedly. And I'm like, doesn't matter. I'm like, this has never happened to me.
I do find it strange that these people allegedly have all these experiences that I've never experienced, even though I'm a lot more liberal. It's very weird. Like, I was even told the story of a Republican stating that a flight was delayed because there were like 40 illegal immigrants that were getting on the plane.
What?
And I'm like, really? Like, how come that only happens to right-wing people? Like, I've never seen 40 illegal immigrants that delay a flight. And I've flown relatively frequently recently.
How would they even know if they're illegal immigrants?
That was an assumption as well. I don't know.
So they were just like maybe a bunch of Spanish-speaking people?
I don't know. Or maybe it was actually like 8 people and they exaggerated.
Or it could just be a lie. They said, I was questioning my friend the other day having an argument like this. I was like, you always have an answer. Your response always depends on somehow it's never his experience. It's his friends, which are either in law enforcement or military. He always does this to, I guess, enforce that, like, oh, like the people that really need to be supported are the ones encountering these issues. And I'm like, have you ever considered that maybe they're just lying? And there was no response.
Again, it's all similar to an abusive relationship. Like exaggerating, making up stories, changing the goalposts. Like Rogan, for example, he's very quick to call Biden an idiot. He said it in the podcast. Yet he thinks that Trump is like super intelligent. It's like up is down, left is right, black is white.
What was the other theory with Biden that, the masks are possible. Like you can disguise yourself. Like I don't think the person who was at the inauguration was President Biden. He seemed too sharp.
Who said that? Was it Curry or was it Rogan that said that?
I had walked out at that point.
I think it was Curry. Y'all were forcing me to listen to that, man.
He's like, why?
You just had it on. And I was like, what the hell? Why do we have to listen to this? And you're telling me that you weren't even listening to that? That was the most crazy shit that I heard the entire time.
I just walked out for a second.
All right, let me look at the transcript real quick.
It reminds me too, like on this episode, he's back on his whole thing that psyops are happening, that the government is basically controlling people. But I mean, if you really think about it, Joe Rogan is the one pulling a psyop on all these people that believe him.
Is it a psyop if you're just too stupid and you actually believe all of it?
Is it possible that you were so far down the conspiracy rabbit hole that you are performing a psyop on yourself?
I mean, it's entirely conceivable because I mean, he doesn't have any sense of where he falls, like intelligence wise. Like he thinks Kamala Harris is a total idiot. He thinks Biden's a moron, and he's fallen into that thing where like every single Democrat is evil. And I told people this before. I was like, look, there can be crooked politicians, but you can't really sit there and tell me that every single one is corrupt.
Well, that's what they teach them on Fox News. Remember when I did that research by watching Fox News for like 3 hours? Every Democrat was horrible. Every Democrat was an idiot. Like they just basically demonized every Democrat.
For a party that says they're running on common sense, I mean, common sense would just dictate that not everybody is unethical.
Yeah, but I feel like social media has messed us up in this way because algorithmically having this absolutist mentality where there is a right, there is a wrong, there's this extreme and there's that extreme. That's what gets the engagement. The thing that they've found over and over and over again when it comes to keeping people on the platforms. The content that is most engaging to people is the most divisive content.
Yeah.
Because either you're going to have someone with this extreme viewpoint validated because people are going to say, yeah, of course, I don't believe in that either. Or you're going to have someone arguing with it and commenting on it saying, no, that's wrong. To all these platforms, that amount of engagement is equal.
Yeah.
Any engagement is good engagement for them. And the same goes for our news networks. The way that we kind of interact with everything, I think we've probably gotten to a point where we don't look at things in this spectrum of morality. We don't look at things in this like gray area. There is right and there is wrong. And if you believe in one side of things, then you cannot believe in the other side of things or anything in between it.
Well, that's a stupid way to think.
You're extremely limited in this sense.
I'm just saying, like, I think social media has kind of funneled us into this kind of thinking.
Funneled like us specifically here or the masses?
The royal us.
I mean, if you are a smart person, you could even look at some of the things that Trump is attempting to do, and you could be like, well, okay, if you do that properly, that would be okay. If you do, like, if you create a process by which people become healthier in a good way, then that could be okay. But the problem is, from what they've said so far and what RFK has said, it's very unlikely that they're going to do things in a proper way.
I don't even think it's an intelligence thing at this point. I think at a certain point, there's just so much backstory, there's so much lore that all this is built up upon. Like, it's all the little conspiracies, all the little lies that are within the realm of belief that all add up to making the things that Trump and Elon and Rogan are saying and doing a lot more plausible.
You don't think there's an intelligence issue? Like, Elon and Trump are idiots. I feel like any intelligent person is like, wait a minute, what's going on with these people? Elon went out there and said, oh yeah, we got the wrong Gaza with the condom story. It was not the Gaza that everyone's talking about lately. It was Gaza and Mozambique where they were giving condoms. And he's like, well, sometimes I'll be incorrect. Fuck, that's stupid. Stupid that you perpetuated that lie. You told it to Trump. And then you're like, oh, well, it's okay. I can sometimes be incorrect. But then at the same time, that's illogical because if someone on the other side is incorrect one time, it's like, oh my God, they're criminals. Like
Fauci?
They should be fired.
And I think Rogan said that on the pod too. He was like, oh, it was ridiculous about the condom thing.
Oh, so he perpetuated the lie too? Is what you're saying?
Yes.
About like how it was like the Gaza where the Palestinians are?
Yeah, when it first came out, he talked about it.
All that I'm saying is I don't think that it's fair to just assume that everyone who believes this is stupid. I think that there's a lot of stuff that's built up over time. I don't think these people started believing all of this overnight.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's years and even decades, like over a decade for some people to have started interacting with this and just have slowly been moved over to this other way of thinking. You know, it's all these little things. So then, of course, the people that are saying these things that, you know, you and I could say are not common sense, that are obviously untrustworthy, that are stupid, it seems more reasonable to folks who have been on this train for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's harder for them to break out of it. They don't have to make those leaps. There's like trust that's been built up with these people. You know, people have probably built up a certain amount of trust with Elon. I think there are a lot of people who would say that they didn't witness Elon like this 10, 15 years ago.
You have so much hope for society that I don't have.
I've already said this multiple times on multiple episodes. I think we're done as a society.
I mean,
I think you said this in episode 1.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because I live in South Texas, but I have noticed a lot of stupidity. So I'm not sure where all these super smart people are who believe all these things. Because I feel like there's a certain level of intelligence where you're going to be like, wait a minute. How can all this be true? How can it be that USAID is doing like all these covert actions that the CIA doesn't want to do, and like they're a criminal organization and all these other lies? Like at some point, and maybe it's the fact that just like the odds are that they're not going to be like a ton of super intelligent people, like at the highest levels.
I really don't think it's just about intelligence. I really don't.
No, I'm saying, but at some point, like
think about the fact that if you are hearing this, and if your thought is that sounds ridiculous, I'm going to go look this up.
Yeah.
And you're already inside of this media sphere algorithmically, you're going to be drawn to all of the same sources that all these people are working off of.
Yeah.
Right? So like that confirms for you, and that's how far you need to go. It's so easy for you're like, well, like I don't know about this. Let me see what Fox is saying. Let me go see what like Wall Street Journal is saying.
Yeah.
If they were to go like even slightly center on this.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the problem. People won't go that other way.
Yeah.
It's all about, no, that media has already been debunked. It's fake. I'm not going to look at it. I'm not going to waste my time. So how do you get them back to the center when they're unwilling to listen to anything you say and they won't look at any other media? Even Joe Rogan today, around the same time, started talking about the fluoride. He's like, oh, well, you have these reliable media sources. And then he goes, if you believe them, which is like basically saying, again, shitting on legacy media, saying that the real news, like to them, he's like, oh, we're so lucky we have YouTube now where you could just look at everything. I mean,
where you
like,
can also just say anything.
yeah. And like YouTube for me has always been like, if I want to find out how to do something, maybe, but I'm not going to be looking at some random guy and assuming that he knows more about the government and the people that are running it.
I do want to give you one example. Okay. And that's why I think that some people are not doing the work, the mental work. So there was something on Twitter, like
X?
or X, whatever. I'm always going to call it Twitter.
It's Twitter. People still call them tweets.
Praising Doge for finding this waste where the Pentagon had paid like an 8,000% markup on soap dispensers and was buying $1,300 coffee cups. And Elon retweeted it too. Like, oh my God, Doge found this. Like, Doge is saving us. If you Google that, and it wasn't just traditional like CNN, ABC, these were old findings. Mm-hmm. It was not something they found. One of the things had been found in like 2018. So yeah, they had paid a lot for the soap dispensers. And then the coffee cups weren't just like a regular cup. They were like some special heating cup that they used to keep like drinks and soups warm on a flight or something. But that was a simple debunk. Like, Doge didn't find that.
Mm-hmm. People don't go as far, right? I mean, you bring up the point about people not wanting to get out of their bubbles and find other news sources. And that is a big question. How do we move forward? What's the next to do? How do we get people to be more skeptical and trust more than one side of the coin? All I'm saying is that I don't think that it's necessarily an intelligence issue. If you've been sucked into this vacuum for so long that you don't know how to get out of it, you're going to follow the breadcrumbs to the places that validate that point. And it's hard to do that extra work, and it's easy to get fooled too. It's extremely easy to get fooled on these social platforms. I was hearing someone online talk about how they had someone disagree with a post that they made on Blue Sky. And they got kind of defensive about it, and they responded to it. And then they came back to it and looked at it, and they found that this account had actually gone and like disagreed with a bunch of different points across the ideological political spectrum. And the running theory is like that this is an AI chatbot that is finding posts and just making disagreements between people as part of potentially some kind of divisive psyop. If we can call it a psyop, right? But it's been years that both the Russian and the Chinese governments have been infiltrating these social media spaces in order to sow division.
Yeah.
So every single time that I hear about, like, oh, I got into this argument on X, I got into this argument on Blue Sky about politics, part of me always wonders, like, is that a real person? Is that a real American that you're talking to?
Yeah.
I mean, it could be a bot. It could be a bad actor. It could be a foreign agent that's trying to sow all of this discord within our country to make us weaker.
I do think also that some people may have the intellect, but they don't want to like get outside of that right-wing universe because they have an agenda. Like they want no taxes or low taxes or whatever their agenda is. So they're continuing down the rabbit hole just because they want their side to meet their particular agenda. But Joe Rogan is not smart.
He said on his comedy special a couple of times, and now actually listening to a few times, he says he's an idiot. But then lately, he's tried to make it seem like he has no interest in politics, but literally it's all he's selling now is politics, how the country is saved, how we're just getting all these things that we would have never got with any other administration. He knows what he's doing. I don't think that he really believes what he's saying.
Yeah.
He knows that he's lying and he doesn't care.
Yeah.
Because the paycheck is going to keep coming. His listeners are going to go up. He's got a billionaire buddy now and the president of the United States as well. So he's not going to care.
I don't know how the country is saved when a lot of Americans have begun to feel unsafe. Think about the fact that that news story came out today that there was that trans man who was abducted and tortured to death over the course of a few months in upstate New York. And even before that, in 2023, there were 35 reported killings of transgender people in the U.S., not to mention folks who have unfortunately committed suicide because of not feeling supported in that environment. I can't imagine that those numbers are going to go down.
Well, people are being emboldened to go back to the way things used to be. Like people say we're going back 50 to 100 years because, I mean, you read about things like 70s and prior. I mean, if you wanted to come out as a homosexual or whatever, I mean, there was a chance somebody would be offended and try to hurt you or kill you. Well, and now these people they feel they can do this again.
Well, and it's not just transgender and gay. I think it's going to also cause issues with women, with minorities.
Yeah.
We're going back really far in terms of our rights, in terms of all the things that have been accomplished.
Yeah, DEI is really going to hurt women as well. And they can spin it any way they want, but that's really what they did. It's racism. It's misogyny. They're not going to, they just want white men to get all these jobs for whatever reason. I mean, I don't know what makes them more qualified.
Nothing.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing how this whole DEI fight is being utilized as a weapon at this point. Basically, if you hire one too many women, if you hire one too many people of color, suddenly that's a DEI issue. I mean, easily now you can have a bad actor that can go in and say, like, oh, like my company hired this Mexican American woman. She must have been DEI hire. I need to report this to my attorney general.
I don't understand how they're getting to the point where they're going after private companies and their hiring practices. I mean, I don't understand what authority they have there.
They're going off of this thesis that it's discriminatory.
I'm already preparing for like a world where if someone doesn't like me as their doctor, like they don't like that I didn't give them an antibiotic, which was not indicated or whatever, that they're going to be like, oh, well, you're just a DEI hire. Like, I can't trust you anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, that has no basis in fact.
Yeah.
Like, my last emergency medicine board certification, I got 100 on my test. Mm-hmm. Like, that's how qualified I am. The average was like a 79. So I beat out probably almost everybody in the country. And that's the thing that people don't understand about DEI. Like, a lot of it is recognizing talent and people who haven't had opportunities and recognizing those that will succeed when given the opportunity.
Yeah. In your medical field, think about all the women and black doctors.
Yeah. Extremely qualified. Probably some of the best doctors I've ever met.
Yeah.
In a lot of instances. Like, there's no difference in people. You know, but some people have better opportunities and better educational backgrounds. And you're trying to identify those that didn't get all those opportunities. And because they're just as likely to be successful. I mean, obviously there's great white men doctors, but there's also great black women doctors. Like, there's really no difference. And in fact, like, I feel that minorities and women, like, often work even harder. And so sometimes they even go above and beyond what you would even have thought. Maybe that person just had average grades or whatever, as far as like getting into med school.
Yeah. Nathan, when you are around people who are kind of pushing it back against DEI in your line of work, what are their main complaints?
About DEI?
Yeah.
I don't think I really experienced people talking about that too much down here. I guess the people that I know aren't really focused on that, but to me, that's more the fact. I think that where we live, it's like 95% Hispanic. So like I said, I told him, I was like, this is important. I go, but we might not feel it down here because we're the overwhelming majority. But I go, it is going to affect other people. So as far as hearing anything, just the fact where we live, and I guess my circle, I haven't heard too much.
It does affect us, though, even though they haven't really been beyond the area. There was a long time period where I was like the only person in my class of 500 that went to med school. And why was that? Because we were disadvantaged as a school district.
Yeah.
Not the greatest education, not the greatest resources. So that's what happened there. I mean, why are we not producing as many doctors, lawyers, PhDs?
Yeah, it's not that the people aren't smart or hardworking around here. They just don't have the opportunities.
Right.
Most of the time. And I feel like even with massive earning potential, things like a pathway that leads to graduate school, even if it's med school, even if it's law school, that's a tough pill for a lot of poor families who are usually minorities to swallow.
Yeah. And I think I talked about it on one of the pods, how I met someone who was really smart, this Hispanic woman, a really smart, great student in college, but she was like, I can't do the debt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even if you know your earning potential could potentially be, what, over 300K?
Yeah.
It's scary.
Right.
And then you have probably had peers, I know Becca had peers too, that did not have to pay a dime for med school because their parents pay for the whole thing. To have that comfort of like, I'm going to have this career that's going to net me six figures, not just low six figures, but like $300,000, $400,000, even more depending on your specialty. And you don't have a single dime of debt to your name.
Yeah.
So you're saying you think that the DEI where we live currently is going to mean that we're going to produce even less doctors?
Yeah, absolutely.
And other
absolutely
successful professions than before.
Yep. And then you're going to create further issues further down the line in terms of the generations, because the less like educated parents, the less doctors that are producing children, you're not providing those advantages to like the next generations. Like, for example, if my daughter went to med school, it would be so much easier for her just because of the fact that she's around me and we talk about medicine.
Yeah.
Like some of these things are just like advantages as far as what you're talking about in the home, what you're teaching your child.
Do you think the men that live in our area are also going to be emboldened to stop hiring women as well?
I mean, in what kinds of jobs? Just
because I mean, well, just from my wife's experience, like she has the job that she wanted. However, she said that the majority of the positions, now that she's a director, are like 99% of the time, these meetings are all men except for her.
Yeah.
And they're very cold with her. They won't acknowledge her. They won't ask for her opinion. So she's in these meetings just listening. Like, well, all the men will talk amongst each other, even though she's a director as well.
Yeah.
She's basically shunned.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, like, you don't think that where we live, if this DEI continues, that they're just going to be like,
the anti-DEI?
Yeah, we don't need to hire a woman for this position.
Well, yeah, probably so, especially if people are like that in the area.
Yeah.
But I did want to say that I do interact with a lot of people, possibly because I'm on social media way too much, and I just get very angry by
I would
these
agree.
things.
You probably are on social media way too much.
But what I've heard from people who are Mexican, which is ridiculous to me, they believe that DEI means hiring unqualified people for the job.
Well, that's the same thing that they tried to say when it was affirmative action.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think about the fact that Jared and I getting accepted into Stanford University, one of the top universities in the country. We were the first people from our high school to ever get accepted to that university. So to think without some eye towards people who were poor, towards people who were minorities, there might be a chance that a university might not even look at your entire school.
Yeah.
For potential students, for potential people to represent your future.
Well, on that point, I do want to note too, it tends to be a horrible assumption to think these people are unqualified to get into Stanford because Justin got a 2340 out of 2400 on his SAT. So most of the time, these assumptions that people are unqualified are just completely baseless.
Yeah, I definitely knew some people, even at that university, but they were usually like legacy admissions, people who had come from the boarding school system, people who had parents who went there.
It's not like they were lowering the requirements for these alleged DEI candidates to get in either, though.
Yeah, it's not like you're going to be able to get in with like a 1100 out of 1600, or I don't know what the equivalent would have been on the 2400 SAT.
And the other thing is, once they're there, I mean, they have to be able to perform.
Yep.
You can't just show up to the school and be like, I'm DEI and you got to pass me or something. Like, you have to put in the work.
Yep.
You have to prove that you belong. Like, just the fact that you got into the door, maybe DEI could have helped you, but DEI doesn't help you once you're there.
Yeah, I can guarantee, I can tell you from experience that not having a bunch of people in our family who had gone to college prior to our generation didn't know a lot about what college was supposed to be like when I got there. And the university does fuck all when it comes to supporting first generation students.
You mean nothing?
Yeah. Yes. Sorry. They do nothing. You're just like the same as anyone else there most of the time. Yeah. In fact, actually, like if you're a rich kid who like has someone famous or someone important in the university, chances are you're still most likely to get that special treatment.
Yeah.
And for a long time, like when people would fight back up against the argument against affirmative action, they're saying like, the real affirmative action is these legacy admissions.
Yeah. Well, I do think that like some minorities that get in that are disadvantaged, some of them do fail.
Yeah.
But most of them don't. Most of them don't, and they succeed.
Yeah. And a lot of them don't fail or drop out because they are mentally incapable.
Right.
Usually it's because they're dealing with some kind of scenario that someone from a much more privileged background wouldn't even come close to having to deal with. Whether it's having to deal with your family debts, maybe there's like someone with substance abuse in your family, something that requires you to quit everything and have to leave. Yeah,
that reminds me of an article that was in the New York Times. It was called Who Gets to Graduate, and it basically went through the lives of people and why they struggle in those types of situations. So New York Times is a great place to read this kind of stuff. It's not just all left-wing biased stuff. It's very interesting.
Don't most of the people that go to these prestigious universities graduate anyway? Isn't it a pretty high success rate?
Yeah.
Yes. I do think that there are some professors that will cater to students' egos. And because of those kids who have been in boarding schools that teach them how to go to college and stuff, they kind of learn these boarding schools is that you can go to office hours and basically pester your teacher into giving you a better grade. You can negotiate points with them because you're annoying them so much.
Terrible. But it was still a great experience for you, right? You learned a lot. Stanford was freaking amazing when I went there. I visited.
Yeah, it was nice.
But you just want to stay in school forever.
Who, me?
Yeah, I imagine that even after law school, you're going to be like, oh, well, I'm going to do this now.
A PhD, postdoc?
No, that's it.
No, she's just be like, I'm going to become an engineer now.
No. Law school has been a lot of fun, though. I didn't expect it. But for me, it's been a blast.
Yeah, it's your law school phase.
I'm in a law school phase, yeah. I mean, is that a phase, though? Because if you go through a med school phase, you're still a doctor for life. So that's not really a phase, sir.
But if you stop practicing medicine, I would say it was a phase.
A 20-year phase?
Yep.
What?
Phases can last however long. It's more about the fact that it has an end.
So anyone who retires from their career has just had a phase?
Yeah, you'll be out of your working phase. And now you'll be entering your retired phase until you get to your dead phase.
I don't what the heck? Horrible.
We're staying by a cemetery here in Austin, so
that's why you're thinking about death?
Death is in mind, yes.
I already had forgotten about the cemetery.
It's massive. It's huge. There's like 2 like funeral homes on the street within walking distance.
We could be buried there tomorrow.
I hope not to die tomorrow.
All right, we'll find out. We'll update you on the pod tomorrow. I think that's about all the time we have for today. Keep taking care of each other. Take care of yourself. listen to other people, be skeptical, challenge yourself to learn some things, and challenge your perspective sometimes, because the world isn't as simple as we would like it to be. It's real freaking complicated.
That is true.
Yeah. So what's not complicated is following us online on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts. Rate it 5 stars. Subscribe. Continue telling folks about it. We're getting listeners all over the country at this point. It's really amazing us, and we want to thank all the folks who are still listening in, including whatever Russian operative is listening from Moscow. I know you're out there, Mikhail or Sasha. And if you want to ask us anything, email over at casadecavasuspod@gmail.com. And we'll see you later.
All right, until next time.
Bye.